My name is Maura Zara. I am an Italian law student at the University of Cagliari and a legal intern at First Steps Legal. Today I will be speaking about the foundations of a regulatory framework for human settlements on celestial bodies. The planned human settlements on the Moon and Mars pose a question of extreme importance, the purpose and foundation of law. It is an excellent opportunity for reflection, which must not be dismissed. Before imagining any kind of legal utopia, it is necessary to ask ourselves about the possibilities of a fairer legal framework for the regulation of human relations. It is a blank page, a unique opportunity in the history of humanity. Law is often considered pragmatic and aseptic, and it truly is one of the most dignified inventions of our society. It is the steadfast instrument for peaceful coexistence and the pursuit of justice. Before addressing specific problems, we should conduct a study which would allow us to lay the base for the regulation of life on Mars and the Moon. In a personal and perhaps excessive movement of anthropocentrism, I remember the words of Immanuel Kant in his Critique of Practical Reason. Two things fill the mind with ever-increasing wonder and awe. The more often and the more intensely the mind of thought is drawn to them, the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me. Briefly, according to Kant, as endowed with a material body and intellect, we must comply with the word of science. We know from experience, and only this is possible for us to do. Even if we look up and see the beauty of the starry sky above us, unfortunately we cannot know for sure what there is in that immensity, for now at least. Faced with the extraordinary possibility that space offers us, I believe that we can appeal as a world community to our morality and trust in the implementation of a more equitable, inclusive, fair legislation without necessarily falling into do-goodness and utopia. In doing so, we must start from what we know, the Earth. After all, it is to the firmness of the earthly ground that the spaceship returned to. This presentation will reflect on the role that space law can play in building a better society outside of our home planet by answering the following questions. Ethics, equity, justice. What meaning do they have in current space law? What is their role in the construction of a universal structure for the regulation of human relationships on other celestial bodies? What problems does the international dimension of these settlements pose, if any? Do we already have the regulatory constructs for building ad hoc legislation for these settlements? How can the current regime benefit future interaction between individuals, communities, governments and companies, and lay the foundation for international cooperation and technical progress? Ethics, equity, justice. What meaning do they have in current space law? What is their role in the construction of a universal structure for the regulation of human relationships on other celestial bodies? Ethics, equity, and justice are three strictly interconnected terms that, in my vision of space law, are combined in the more general concept of cooperation. If we want to take advantage of the opportunity that this blank page gives us, we must opt for fair terms of cooperation that lead us to a substantial equality that fills the starting disparities of the states and allows an equal access to space for every country, and consequently an equitable distribution of space resources, which must be translated into opportunities for developing countries. What problems does the international dimension of these settlements pose, if any? I think the main problem is that disparity between different national legal systems in the standards of procedural guarantees applicable to every aspect of our civil society, goods and property, individual conflicts, private law in general. Above all, it is important to ensure compatibility with the norms for the protection of fundamental human rights by operating a standardization acceptable to all countries. There is a need for rules that are suited to the particular characteristics of space law and capable of avoiding potential abuses from governmental and non-governmental entities. Do we already have the regulatory constructs for building ad hoc legislation for these settlements? I don't think so, but we have two start points: the non-appropriation principle and the concept of the common heritage of mankind. The non-appropriation principle is set out in Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty, according to which outer space, including the Moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claiming sovereignty, by use or occupation, or by any other means. It is therefore forbidden for states to appropriate outer space and any part of it. The concept of the common heritage of mankind is set out in Article 1 of the Outer Space Treaty. It means that space is recognized as a resource from which every state has the right to benefit, regardless of the degree of economic and technological development achieved. On this regard, it is meaningful that none of the major spacefaring nations has signed the Moon Agreement, which establishes the rule governing the exploration, use and exploitation of the Moon and its natural resources. How can the current regime benefit future interaction between individuals, communities, governments and companies and lay the foundation for international cooperation and technical progress? All nations, and especially developing countries, can only benefit from international cooperation. In addition to the strengthening relations between states, I'm thinking, of course, about the economic benefits and the exchange of knowledge and technologies. A few suggestions on what can be done right now to ensure peace outside of the only home we ever know, the Earth. I think it needs to focus on international disputes resolutions. And the tool that, in my opinion, currently seems particularly effective is arbitration, primarily for the new panorama of space actors, with the growing direct participation of private enterprises in space activities disputes, especially because diplomatic dispute settlements do not currently exist. Furthermore, arbitration allows for speed of resolution, and it is especially useful when a matter involves the quantification of a dispute. In this perspective, I also think it is important to propagate adequate information on space law and its study across the world. In conclusion, my point is that it's plausible and desirable that a profound awareness of the need to build a regulation that ensures equity and justice in the management of space settlements and space resources is achieved. Thank you for your attention.